All right, so welcome. This free webinar, it's October 2022, and this free webinar is going to be focused on StoryChamp's small group intervention. I'm Dr. Megan Kirby. I'm the Dissemination and Implementation Specialist with Language Dynamics Group. So the purpose of being here really, we're hoping, right, is that we have this higher bar, this standard that's set for our students, and it started over a decade ago, in which, and I love this quote, says, strong academic standards are the foundation of a sound educational system, right? But raising the standards alone is not enough to ensure academic success. So you can raise the bar, but unless we're giving folks the tools to help students meet that expectation, then it's kind of moot. So no one ever achieves it. And so our morale also goes down as the adults responsible for working with these students. And specifically, it's oral language. And oral language the attention that oral language deserves, especially in the younger grades, I think is being missed out, right? Because children's oral language competence is strongly predictive of their ability to learn to read and write. So their ability to not only understand, but to produce and express that they have this understanding, also to express themselves and their voices. So listening and speaking, vocabulary, mastery of syntax, all of these things are all predicated off of a strong oral language foundation. You can decode all you want. And nothing against decoding. I'm glad that our schools are working on this now. So don't don't interpret it that I am dissing decoding. Love it. You need it, but you also need language comprehension. Okay. And right now we tend to be focused on one of those two things instead of both. So here, with these key shifts in academic expectations for our students, right, over the past decade, even within the past 5 years, with now shifts to phonics instruction, explicit evidence, research-based phonics instruction, not Fountas and Pinnell, which I will diss. It's recognized that we really need complex language and that we need narrative and expository language, both of them, right, for reading, writing, and speaking. We need students to understand the key details from the text that we're asking them to read, right? Because the focus of education, and I'm sure you've heard this, moves away from learning to read, in your first primary years, to we need you to read to learn. And so where we give you a text or a passage and expect you to be able to answer questions on a worksheet, or I'm going to call on you and ask you, what was the main idea? Yeah, you have to be able to read in order to learn from what it is you read. So you've seen this in the national and the local education standards. And right now, actually, throw in the chat, how many of you are SLPs, so speech and language pathologists, or in school for speech and language pathology? Just gonna get a show of folks. SLPs, proud to be here. So usually the folks, great, and school-based ones even better. You understand this need for language instruction. For those of you who are not, myself included, you're welcome here. I'm glad you're here too. But a lot of you are SLPs, right? And your focus is most of the time, because this is the only thing that you can spend all your calories on, because there's not multiple of you, is that students who need more intensive, what we consider tier 3 services, so intervention, one-on-one, they're not making progress on the general education curriculum. That's your job, right? So they have education plans that are individualized for their needs. They've been identified with a disorder. That's your job. But I want to make a little note that actually, unfortunately, for everybody else in the system, especially if you're in the school system, your expertise as an SLP is going to benefit, or would potentially benefit, all the students across every classroom and all the grades. And everything in this presentation here that I'm going to speak about, then yes, it's school-based, but it's all going to benefit students. And most likely, if you're not an SLP like myself, it's going to benefit you because you're going to have a greater understanding of this expertise that SLPs have that we just aren't aware of. So some of these things that, like, how do you teach students to use more complex language, to also understand it? How do we teach narrative and expository language that's used for reading, writing, and speaking? And then also, how do we teach kids how to understand, right? Understand key details from text. Ugh. I didn't have a curriculum for this. I left the classroom many years ago. Things really haven't changed. So it's like if I went back, I probably wouldn't have one anyway. But I am going to focus on just narratives because this is why I'm in this job. I am now a researcher and trainer and go speak in lots of different places. I love it. Um, and when I'm invited to come talk, I can talk about oral language, but it's really the magic comes from narrative language. Okay, so we in Story Champs we do have expository procedures, and we're not going to go in that today because we have actual lesson plans that target increasing students' information retells and their writing and their vocabulary, like expository, the tier 3 content area vocab words. We have that. But the importance of narratives is going to be here. I'm going to show you one of the favorite quotes that I got from some friends out in St. Lucie in Florida. And so it's from Tyrion Lannister. It's in the last episode from the Game of Thrones. Don't watch this, look away. Actually, don't even look. You can listen. But if you have been waiting to see the last episode for some reason you haven't yet and you want to, do not watch this. Just listen, because I don't want you to see who is still alive at the end of the show.
What unites people? Armies? Gold? Flags? Stories. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it. No enemy can defeat it.
And then we're going to stop there because then it goes into telling you all these other spoilers. But this goes on to say, and I believe this, a good story captures you and it not only empowers you and allows you to tell your history, your truth, but it actually has some academic relevance. Whether I didn't realize that a long time ago. So here's a basic narrative definition for those of you that are not familiar with Story Champs or haven't received training from me. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. So a narrative, we need to recognize that narratives are something that need to be told or written, right? And that are causally related. So they have a temporal order, they have a sequence, and it's going to be very similar, if not the same, across most cultures. There's might be 2 or 3 and that we know of in the world that don't follow this temporal sequence. So you're going to notice that theme in Story Champs. And where there's this focus on story grammar, that's what we really focus on. We also want to make it very clear that there's this causal and temporal connection between events. So we teach these linking terms. And once you learn linking terms, your story is going to naturally get longer. So we include those in our stories on purpose. And so the story grammar itself, it's really the scaffolding that holds that develops or builds a story. So this is the Stein and Glenn story grammar model. There are many, many other attempts to characterize story grammar. We didn't want to recreate the wheel. This works beautifully. We tend to focus on this one in our research because it entails these aspects here. So many of you are already familiar with narratives or story grammar or story structure. You're going to see setting, initiating event, internal response or plan, an attempt to solve the problem, a consequence, resolution, reaction, right? And then the 3 things that actually make up a minimally complete episode are what we want to try to establish first. And our students need this in order to have a coherent story. And so that at a bare minimum, we need stories when we're, as a listener, we need stories to have some kind of initiating event. Why am I here listening to you? Like, what is the setup of this movie or this context? And then we have this attempt, right? Attempt to engage or this action. So now I'm entertained and I'm hooked. And then what happens? I don't need a resolution yet that we can teach that later, but like, what is the consequence of that attempt? Did it or did it not work? Right. And so that is what we consider to be a minimally complete episode. Okay. And then also in narratives, we should be communicating in a way that is clear, right? And have language in our narrative that facilitates understanding for that listener. Because when you're telling a story, people usually have not been there with you. Otherwise, they're bored or they're going to interject and like cut in. We've all been there. For with my husband, apparently my stories are not interesting enough, and this is what I do for a living. So you want to paint a world with all of your words, right? You want to create a scene for folks, you want to intrigue, and it's usually for entertainment. When you do that, whether you want to or not, you're forced to use these more complex words, this precise vocabulary so that the imagery is there, right? So naturally, your syntax is going to become more complex and your story structure is more clear because people need to follow along so they're not confused. If you left any part of your story out, again, thinking back to, going to a party with my husband and me leaving out an aspect that he thought was important, it's usually not. People will notice and they'll be confused, right? And so these sorts of things this is what we call academic language, but the story structure, but also this complex language that comes with it. This is what Story Champs is about. This is exactly what we promote. It's or really any contextualized language intervention. Okay. So the definition of academic language is language used in school to help students acquire and express knowledge, or it's just not about domain-specific words, not about teaching them, the science and history content terms. No, there's more to academic language than that. And teachers use academic language, really, if they use it, actually, let me think back. So I'm a special ed teacher by trade, and I taught K through age 22. So primary school, so ages 5, 6, up through ages 22 in a variety of different settings. And I didn't really I didn't have a curriculum. And so I would be reading books that were very basic and didn't have this complex vocabulary, didn't have a lot of causal temporal ties. And I have students with autism or autistic students who basically weren't able to learn or acquire. I wasn't modeling the language that they needed so that they could excel academically. And in hindsight, it's always 2020. I would go back and I would provide that for them rather than, I don't know, just assume that it wasn't appropriate or wasn't accessible. And so it's very unfair, right? And so we need all students, even those that maybe others think that it's too complex or too hard or it's going to overwhelm them. Everybody needs academic language to do well in school. And when you do well in school, your opportunities and your quality of life are improved. Okay, so this is actually a social justice issue for my folks out there of 2 out of 3 kids can't read. Actually more now, post-COVID, and that's from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP. So, you want to talk about some other diagnoses, developmental disabilities, and it's like 1 in 55. 2 out of 3 can't read. So enough said. So now I'm going to show you another brief video. So thinking about complex language and academic language, it's also for the purpose of entertaining. Now, I want you to watch this and just consider how this person was able to get to this point. Basically, how is it possible that this person can talk like this and they're not actually reading from a book? What catches our attention is the way this person communicates, their expression. They're painting a world for folks who are playing this Dungeons and Dragons game. And this is a big meetup. And so he's famous for being a great narrator. Gosh, it's going to bother me. Someone throw in what that role is called. Dungeon Master. And so in this complex world that he's going to paint, I want you to hear and listen for the complex academic language that we want students to get. And think about, can you generate this level of high quality talk unaided, unscripted? Can you just generate that on your own? Or would it be better if we provided you with stories and narratives to just read? Probably the latter. Okay, so let's take a look.
This booming continues in your minds, and each of you, one at a time, wakes up. You feel damp, warm, the smell of brimstone all around you. That booming you think is the headache throbbing in your head, but then you realize it's explosions as well. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And as your eyes flutter open, You see that you are each lying on a riverbank, next to strange greenish water, whispers rising up from it. And on the other side, you see the two largest armies you have ever seen in your life, battling under an amber sky, one side howling mad demons, and the others devils. Some blotting out portions of the sky with their bat-like wings, others above the demons hovering vulture-like, hurling magic and weapons down upon their foes.
So, woo, I don't know about you, but I have that scene painted for me, and there's not one illustration that I need, right? And this is someone who can generate this language unscripted. And how wonderful is that? And for our students that really love sci-fi or like historical fiction, listen, give them a job in Hollywood, right? So this is where we can really capitalize on stories and how entertaining they are, how easy they can come to some people. And that's how we're going to teach academic language, okay? So let's go over some things so that it's just, so it's not stressful at all. So you have a basic understanding of story champs and why it works so you can tell other people. But first and foremost, it is evidence-based. And I say that, of course, with some qualifications, because I'm a researcher, I'm a consumer of research. I know that there's really no such thing as 100% proving something. Otherwise, like, why are we scientists? So, but we're really accumulating all of this. When we're talking about evidence, we're talking about all of the evidence that's been accumulated over time, right? Compounded. And since we've been around, we've really accumulated tons of evidence over time. This is just some of the studies that we have conducted ourselves, but also others. So it's not just Trina, who's at University of South Florida, Doug, who's at University of Wyoming, formerly BYU, and then myself, I'm at University of South Florida as well, and Mary Baldwin in Virginia. We do research because we love it, but we also have peers, some of them we don't even know. I have a Google alert set up for any time someone publishes research using story champs, right? And so it's compounded. So this is just a snapshot. There's way more. I do encourage you, if you have any curiosity about whether it's on the What Works Clearinghouse website, I just found out that we as biased people who work for Language Dynamics Group and sell it, we cannot do those evidence quality reviews ourselves. That would be awful. In the past, maybe that's how certain things got up there. But if you're curious or someone asks you, oh, is it on there? Like, what level evidence does it have? Does it match the ESSA? Every Student Succeeds Act qualifiers. We do have a promising rating, especially for use, or in particular for use with bilingual students. So it's tier 3, I believe. But I would love it if you all just did to the frequently asked questions or the help desk and ask them to review story champs. Given that we have so much research, maybe they put it on their radar based on consumer demand. So I already emailed them. I can't keep emailing them. I need more people to email them. Anyway, all right, tangent. So it shows you lots and lots of studies. It's all there. We also build story structure. So one of the things that we do is we want to establish just basic story structure first. And the Gillums, they have this program Skill, Ron and Sandy, they do the same thing. They start off with basic story structure first. And so this is it's not a hard and fast rule, but essentially you want to try to establish that foundation before you add on to the scaffold of story grammar. And then before we even build in complex language or work on language complexity. And then as I've talked about, we really also, with Story Champs, we get results where it promotes metalinguistic knowledge. What I mean by that fancy term is that students learn to talk about language and they become aware of the schema or the structure of this narrative. And that metalinguistic facilitation leads to something super cool. It's manifested in real life. It's something that becomes ingrained and useful to them if they need to advocate for themselves. So if I, again, worked with my population and my students were significantly impacted by their diagnoses or the disorder, And I wish I had taught them oral narrative. Like I wish I had story champs, because in the future they needed to advocate for themselves. They needed to be able to tell someone if something had happened to them in the past, right? To get help from other adults and caregivers in their life, like if someone had hurt them. And you can't do that if you can't tell a story, generate a story, that something that has happened to you, with all the key story grammar parts in temporal cause, like in order, using the language that you need to use. So much for like social stories and all these things that I had to make and that were great at the time. But if no one's there to make a social story book for you, or a narrative picture book for you, call it what we want, what good is it? I should have been teaching them, the structure of stories so they could carry that for the rest of their life. Okay. So these principles are basically applicable across the ages. So you can use story champs, like I said before, with students who are considered to be in high school. I taught vocational. Right? Story champs also keeps kids active, or students active, and this is super crucial. Talking is necessary to get better at talking, but children, to get better at listening, need to practice active listening, right? These are research-based principles that are in other programs and tons of studies outside of contextualized language instruction. Just general learning research, like education field research, we know that active responding and having children actually produce the language is crucial to this aspect, or is crucial to the effectiveness of a program like this. So it's much easier, like you and I have sat back and we listen to someone talk, like in that Dungeons and Dragons video in the previous slide, right? But it's another thing to ask you or me just to like get up and talk like that, right? And so we need to have the ability to, we can listen, but we also need to practice producing as much as that. Story champs, another reason why it's so effective is we use what Teresa Ukrainitz's work has and her book, Language Intervention. She talks about this whole idea of introducing the whole big picture, breaking it down, breaking components that you want to teach down into parts, and then put it back together in a big picture. And that's whole, part, whole instruction. And so by using whole, part, whole instruction, you don't remove from context what it is you're teaching. The context in story champs is the story, right? So we're teaching the vocabulary, we're teaching complex language, we're teaching story grammar in the context of telling a story and then helping kids retell it in a fun way where no one gets anything wrong. Okay, and that's why students love it. We're not extrapolating this complex language or teaching because, so that, when, after, in isolation. So as a behavior analyst, I taught prepositions in isolation. Horrible. Slap in my hand on that. I didn't know better, and I didn't have an SLP friend at the time. And I was a teacher. And so I would point out to you that it's really the context that matters. And so if you're using story champs, please don't teach these things like story grammar components and the icons. Please don't teach them in isolation. Okay. We also, with story champs, we also have visuals. They're great. They're like to me, I love how beautiful the kit looks. I know it's all this research, but actually it looks nice. It doesn't look like it's fancy research and boring. So we use these visuals to help kids really be engaged and to cue them in. But when we're using visuals in these illustrations, the key is to fade those as much as possible. Because in the real world, like I just said before, we don't have pictures or cue cards to help us tell our own story or to write our stories, right? So in every Story Champs lesson, this is huge. This is a non-negotiable feature. We fade visuals completely. So students are, by the end, the students get to a step where they are retelling the story or generating their own without any visuals. Okay, and that is key. So you must follow the lesson plan, please, from start to finish in one session. If you cannot do that in one session, do not chunk it up across days. You email me and we'll figure something out. Okay. Now, Story Champs also, we provide immediate corrective feedback. It's a natural process. So think about this. If I'm having my students tell a story, or actually they're just talking about something they did in the day, and we're teaching them to generate a story. It is absolutely okay and natural and acceptable to stop them and give them feedback because it's natural to do so. So if they're telling me a story and they're talking about someone I don't know, as like another student, I'm probably going to stop and say, hey, I don't know who who are you talking about? Because if they're just using a general noun and they're not naming a name or telling me other context about this character, I'm lost and confused and I'm not paying attention to the rest of their story. So when students are doing this, we're having them practice, we interrupt, not rudely, but in a natural context, we provide them with immediate feedback. Like, hang on a second, who are you talking about? I'm not sure. But because when we're a listener, and the reason why I would do that, and like if the roles were reversed, they should do it too. We have a schema in our mind as a listener because we know story structures. We know stories have characters. I should know who's being talked about, right? So when story grammar are missing, like information is missing, and that leaves the listener confused, right? And so when we're in a reciprocal conversation, what we want to try to teach, right, these meaningful outcomes like social skills, you really need to help your students understand that the other person is going to be confused. Like, look at their face. But that other person is confused if you're leaving out key parts of a story because it's what they're expecting. And when something doesn't happen that they're expecting, they're left confused. Okay, and it's a negative feeling. Or it's not really welcome. And so really we use this open-ended prompt. We would do something like this. So if a student was saying, yeah, so then she was crying, and I'd say, what, who, right? Who are you talking about? Who was crying? That is a statement of like confusion tacting or labeling why it is I'm stopping them, but I'm asking a WH question that is this open-ended question where that is actually a prompt. Who are you talking about? And then the student should provide that and like, oh, and I can clean up and recast what they just said. Oh, you meant Sally. Sally was crying? Oh, continue. Right. So this is actually a part of our two-step prompt, and you'll see it on every one of our lesson plans. So you don't need to memorize this part of this webinar because I know I'm going fast. Another thing that we have in Story Champs is that we have the ability to differentiate and individualize. So Story Champs is a multi-tiered language program. So it comes with lesson plans already pre-made with whole group, like a large group, small group, so it's students about 4 per group, and one-on-one sessions. Okay, and so they're already pre-made. So if you need to teach basic story grammar, just pick the lesson plan for basic story grammar based on is it the whole group lesson, small group, or one-on-one. There is no more need for adapting a single lesson plan that's for whole group and now adapting it for your special needs, right? Okay. Now, of course, Story Champs also helps facilitate and actually just arranges for generalization. What we do matters when it has a lifelong impact or an outcome, right? So if we're working on something and then the student leaves us and moves, or in my case, I had clients in an outpatient setting who during COVID weren't in the clinic anymore. And I'll be darned if what we were working on in the clinic didn't generalize to home, and what a waste of time for them and honestly for me too, but mostly for them and their families, right? The same goes for Story Champs, the school setting or clinic setting. We don't just like train and hope for generalization. And that's what I would say that most programs do. I'll show you how we don't just train and hope, but the biggest way, the reason why things generalize and maintain and sustain over time is because we fade those visuals, right? So our lessons are purposely written so that visuals from step 1, there's like all the help. And then by the time you get to the end of the teaching sequence, there's no more visuals, right? And so for those of you that are going to have a question later about, well, do you always fade visuals? If my student has difficult time communicating, is it even appropriate? You want to fade visuals as much as possible. But obviously, I'm telling you right now, you are the expert. You have the expertise in your child in the context. I do not. I'm just a researcher. And so you have to use your best clinical judgment, a key term with evidence-based practice. You don't want to frustrate your student to the point where like learning is just not even going to occur because they're not enjoying Story Champs. They have reached frustration level. They're not being successful. And listen, no teaching goes on through error correction. And so you really, if you have to give more visual support, initially, sometimes that's for a year. We have clinicians who use Story Champs once a week, or once every other week in their sessions. And they've been working on lessons for 2 years now because we have tons of lessons. And now they're working on writing, right? But you might have to, for a while, make the best judgment as to whether or not you need to continue to use visuals and when you decide to fade them. So if you have any questions that are very specific to certain students, go ahead and email me and follow up. So be as detailed as possible. But anyway, it's a language program, not a visual program, and that's just the key. Okay. Guess what? Story Champs also involves caregivers. So that's your parents, the older sibling, anybody. An after-school program, an adult there. So we already include with the kit a take-home or homework activity that goes with every level A and level B story that we have in our storybook. And so you will send home those take-home activities, and it's going to match the story that you told at school with them or that they worked on. And so our main goal in having these practice activities is, and like what's in it for the families, every parent, I've yet to meet one that doesn't, wants to know, like have a conversation with their child. They want to know how their day was. And in that, they pick them up from somewhere like, let's say preschool or daycare, and they're driving home and they say, how was your day? Most of the time, they're going to get, I don't know, unless a child has oral narrative skills, right? They can organize the information from their day, recall it, put it into the little schema boxes, and then tell a story to their caregiver. Until they have that ability to have these oral narrative skills, that conversation is going to be rote, or it's going to be, I don't know, fine. So it's a skill that really a lot of people benefit from, but most importantly, the parents and caregivers, they get the most bang out of it. We also, if you're using the program as an interventionist, these activities that I mentioned previously can also be forwarded to classroom teachers, who then in turn can influence the students' ability to like both practice complex language in group activities and just promote it beyond your intervention setting. I'm just going to give you, tell a secret that had I received some of these things, I would have been learning as a teacher with a master's degree in education and special ed. I would have been learning so much had I been given that to aid my students. And I probably would have been asking you, if you're an SLP or a reading interventionist, for more. Like, I want more knowledge. I want more education. What is this? Why? Even though I'm very busy, the side effect is that I'm learning more. So the student is getting exposed to more as I'm learning more. Right? So now the final thing, the final ingredient that makes Story Champ so effective is that it's super engaging, right? Not just because we're playing games with students, but because we have the children usually at first tell their own stories and talk about things that are real and relevant to them. Who doesn't want to be like asked questions like about things they like? You think about it, we do that with our clients or our students. No wonder they prefer adults. Like, we constantly ask them, questions about things we already know they're interested in. So we can work on language and maintain like their attention. But yeah, no wonder they love us. Other kids could care less. But if you've heard of this phrase, follow the child's lead. Okay, so that's what Story Champs does. And in turn, when you follow the lead, it promotes emotion. So think about this. Like, I will ask students, and it's one of the prompts, tell me about a time when you got lost or when you got hurt. You can feel that, right? Those are feeling words. We know that feelings and emotions are visceral, especially in research shown when you have a negative experience, you're more likely to remember that memory when there are negative emotions attached to it, right? It's less likely you're going to remember feeling super happy, but like, I felt joyous. Like, those are academic language terms that you'll see in like text. It's very rare and probably a little weird if folks are using that in regular conversation informally. But basically, when you have the opportunity to tell your own story and share, and the audience of adults and others are captivated, that facilitates learning, right? It facilitates engagement. Retelling a story is also engaging because I'm not bored. I'm not sitting waiting on my turn, right? all eyes and ears are on me if I'm the student who gets my turn and it's my turn to retell, and it becomes all about me. I'm the storyteller. Like I've got the teacher's spotlight or that lead. Um, and in story champs, really, you as the adult, you just play the supporting role. And I think I hear about all the time that the kids love story champs. I really wish folks would articulate it a little bit more as to like, well, what do they like about it? Versus my assumptions that they don't get anything wrong. And it's, yeah, all of these things, like they have the spotlight. We do social validity, but anytime you want to send me feedback about exactly why, or in the students, film them, tell me why they love story champs. I will better understand it. Anyway, so the natural consequence of storytelling, right, is that you get attention. We do it for entertainment and approval from peers. We intrinsically enjoy it, and it makes us want to tell stories more when we get a reaction from our audience. So it's a skill that if it's so enjoyable that it will become intrinsic motivation and naturally work on together. Okay, so we also have online materials. We have videos on our website on how to do story champs online digitally. I'm not going to go through that. You can go to languagedynamicsgroup.com. And then there is, I believe it's an implementation, video demonstrations, and like boom, right there is how to do the online digital presentations. And Trina runs through a whole lesson with a student, a young one. But now for the meat and potatoes. Okay, so for small group, right? We tend to start students out with stories that we've created, and with story champs we do, right? Because then we have control over the environment really tightly. So each of our stories have multiple versions or levels of complexity. So like there's a level A story, a level B story. There's classic level A and B stories. They have 12 versions each. And then the Blitz stories, 13, starts at 13. I think it goes through 26. You can call me a liar in the chat. It's late. But anyway, so basically why we use so many different versions of a story is that we're not trying to have students memorize stories. We don't repeat them in consecutive sessions because we will accidentally teach the importance of memorization, not teaching students to listen for the pattern that appears in different stories, but across them they all have the same order and story grammar. So we want students to develop a schema. So we do not repeat stories in consecutive sessions. We're not trying to have a retell with 80% accuracy. No, that's the reinforces or rewards memorization and does not teach students the skill that they need, like the structure. Okay. All right. So here's where we have broken out into, so like this is just for teaching story structure. And then these stories go a step further where you have a specific story structure, but then we also have stories that have more causal connections. So level C, we embed a lot of becauses and so that's into the story so that there's multiple opportunities for students to hear that when you're telling the story, so that the chances of them using those words in their retell is higher. And we take those words out and we replace it with like a bunch of afters and whens. So you can see what the targets are for each of these levels. Okay. And then you get down to I, where you have everything like causal and temporal connections and modifiers, like those noun verb modifiers. And then finally in level J, that's the most difficult level that we include in the storybook. And that's what it's called advanced story structure, but it's a double episode. And so that's where you have a problem that's encountered, and then the character tries to solve it, but that solution doesn't work. So that attempt doesn't work, and the problem still exists. And so then you have to have another attempt, and then it finally works out. So there's 2 episodes, okay? And that's really where we want to get students to that, because that's real life, right? Okay, so here's some of the different versions of the stories that we have, right? So if I'm a level B story, this is online in our digital presentation that when you get the kit, you get access to. So I would click, oh, not yet. So I would click the story that I want, but I'm in level B. So these stories right here would also be in level A. But if I want level B, I just click the story that I want. And so I'm going to pick story number 7. Yeah, no, I lied. No, I'm not. I picked something else. So I thought I got the doctor one. And then this is what comes up. And so, as I mentioned before, that we have visuals pre-made for you, and we primarily focus on these pictures and icons and pictography. Our awesome graphic designer, our resident in-house artist, Olivia Peterson, she's the one that went and actually does all of our illustrations and came up with these designs, and we love her. So you would see this. So let's say I told a story. Oh, goodness gracious, sorry. I told the story, and then one of the steps says remove the illustrations and just leave the icons out. And that's what would happen. And eventually I would click a button that in the bottom right that says remove icons, and the students would retell the story without the icons. So you see the progressiveness of fading out visuals. So by the end of the lesson, they didn't need it, but they've heard the story so many times by the time they get to that step. I also, with Story Champs, just briefly, we solely don't work on just retells, right? But we also work on personal story generation, but fictional story generation. And we have an emphasis on this. And so there are these story starter cards that we have, like the physical pack, and they're also on the digital presentation. And that's if you're working with students to generate their own stories to practice that. And you can just pull a picture and our lesson plans tell you what to do next. Okay. And then, like I said before, it's a multi-tiered program, so you've got these lesson plans. And today I'm just going to focus on the small group ones here that are in yellow, but now you can see why we wouldn't include this in the box. It's on the flash drive. And so when that happens, you aren't going to, let's say if I'm an interventionist, I don't need all the large group ones. So we include that on the flash drive, so you only print out what you need. And so here, right here, when you open the file up in the kit, once you've got this PDF open, you would just pick out which small group master lesson plan you want to do, and you just follow the procedures step by step, okay? And the procedures that are on this form that I'm going to show you are exactly what we have done as researchers, not even as researchers, the teachers and SLPs who are actually implementing our research, right, or implementing the intervention, and they send us their data. So it's, the effects are actually going to be applicable to you is what I'm getting at, is because we have real world people do it and collect the data on their own and send it to us and we just score it. But the procedures are exactly what they do in research. So if it's effective, it's because they followed these steps, okay? All right, so then we have, this is what a basic story structure retell looks like. And in this particular, this is the whole part, whole piece, okay? So the first thing we do is we model the story, right? That's the whole of the teaching process. So we model, we contextualize this. And we tell the story with pictures and with icons. And then, in the small group, then we have the students in the small group, usually 3 to 4, each tell a part of the story. So this is the team retell. Okay. And now I'm breaking into whole part. So this is the part piece. Okay. And what we do is we give each of the students an icon, and the illustrations are out, but we give them all an icon, and some kids accidentally get the icon that they need to be working on. Because progress monitoring tells me so. But and I would write their initials, FYI. I would write their initials in the corner there of like what icon I should be accidentally giving them. But they, in order of appearance in the story or the illustrations, I say, okay, who has character? All right, tell this part. You tell that part, right? And then I'm going to summarize or paraphrase the story. I do not read word for word from the storybook. You do not have to. At that point, I can probably tell it by memory, but I am making sure that I include all the complex language that I need to, especially if my target, and I make sure that I include all these key parts in my story retell. But you don't have to read word for word from the storybook, especially when it gets super long. Now, whole part, and then we're going to get back to whole. Okay, so whole part, whole. The whole is when I summarize it. Everybody just told their own part, but now it was kind of piecemealed, and I might have had to help some of them. I don't let them get things wrong. So errorless learning. And then I would be like, okay, and then I summarize the story. So now I'm back to whole. Okay. Then individual retell. One student does the story retell themselves from start to finish, so from character to the ending. And then I'm helping them. They don't get anything wrong. So right here is this little remembering, like use 2-step prompting to help students. Make corrections immediately, like in a natural way. And then I will summarize that part of the story if I need to. And everybody, while they're waiting, is playing the story game. So hopefully you'll yeah, I'm going to get to that. You will see a video. All right, so I'm just going to cruise through these because I want to show you the examples of different things that you can target, but I want to save some time for this video. So compared to the last lesson that focused on students retelling someone else's story, here, students are now learning how to tell their own story, okay? And just having these key story grammar parts. And now they're going to focus on causal connections. Notice it's still going to be a whole part, whole approach. You model a story, then you say, this story has some special words in it. We call them connection words. And in doing so, it not only brought attention to the parts, like we broke that down, but it's again in the context of the story. So we provide scripts like this, like it's right in here. You might have to highlight it when you print these out for yourself, because it's gonna be a tiny print. So we provide these scripts so that you can just, jump in and teach academic language. So we basically we'd tell the students in this lesson, that these special words tell us why something happened. So causal connections are words that tell us why something happened. And then we would have the students listen to us when we repeat the parts of the story that contain those words, and they would be in bold in the storybook. And like things like because and so that. And then we do a team retell, and we are really listening and waiting and making sure that they include those key words in their retells. And we're going to help them make sure that they do that. And just really focusing on the child and having them use causality, right? And by doing so, they're going to have multiple opportunities to practice this language, and we're not assessing, okay? That's what progress monitoring is for, and you can use the cubed, the narrative language measures. Okay, this is an example of blitz attack. This is where you're adding things together. So you're doing causal connections and temporal connections and modifiers. We're getting advanced, right? So essentially, just follow the script. It's scripted for you. So you can be creative. You can use your best clinical judgment and kind of tweak a little words. But the outline here is to just help people understand, again, we did this in research. So this is why Story Champs works for these things. And so you can summarize the story. You don't have to read it word for word from the book because the stories are going to be a lot longer. But make sure you have all the parts and you're using the words in your own retell, that you're modeling it, okay? But these steps, you cannot leave off anything because these are the essential ingredients of effective teaching. So if we hear Story Champs doesn't work, my first question is going to be, are you following the whole lesson plan from start to finish that one day? All right, we also have lesson plans for group fictional generation. Those are super fun. You got the story starter card and everybody contributes almost like a campfire storytelling, right? Then we've got information retell, and we include all this stuff. It's just folks rarely learn that this is even in there. This is expository language, and we help students understand how, or practice really, how to identify the main idea and key details from expository passage that I have read aloud to them. Okay, if you're interested, we also include like the icons and these graphic organizers, these pattern blocks. They're all in there. If you are interested in training specifically for this, you're going to email training@languagedynamicsgroup.com because we can probably do something. Won't be for free. But I'm thinking about getting a small group of people so it's cheaper together just to go over those, like much cheaper. Anyway, here's writing. This is my favorite. So again, Story Champs doesn't just work on oral language, right? So we work on written language as well. You can't write what you can't say though. So here we have add-on lesson plans where you can really dig into vocabulary instruction, make transition from level B to level C stories, so on and so forth. Okay. And then quickly, like I want to show you how, like this is how the level of complexity. We're getting level B blitz, level C, level E, level F. See how they're getting longer, G, H, I, and then finally J. And this is that double episode. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to break down on a video here for you in our remaining time. And it might go a little bit over, so I apologize. But let's look at a video together. And it's a small group lesson with Dr. Spencer, and she's going to be working with some students, a group of 4, I think they're preschool or kindergarten, I can't remember. And I'm going to annoy you. I'm sorry, because I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to pause it. I'm going to talk about what we just saw. And then I'm going to hit play again and probably stop and talk some more. So let's get started here.
Okay, I want to know if you guys are ready to play Story Champs. Say yay, Story Champs.
Yay, Story Champs.
All right, then we are ready. Ready to roll. Remember, the first part, Miss Trina gets to tell the story first, okay?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I wish I would show you the screen.
Okay,
She lays out the illustration
if you guys
cards,
are ready
right?
to play Story Champs. Say yay, Story Champs.
Yay, Story Champs.
All right, then we are ready. Ready to roll. Remember, the first part, Miss Trina gets to tell the story first, okay? After school, Tyrell went to the park with his mom. Tyrell is our character. See him right there?
Okay, see how she's teaching
When
the
Tyrell
icons
came down the
in
slide,
context.
He landed in a big mud puddle. Uh-oh. That's his problem. That's right, very nice. Tyrell.
See, so notice how she said, oh, be darned, this isn't just crashing. So she said, Tyrell is our character, or he fell in a mud puddle. That was the problem. So she's teaching, this is the first time that they've experienced Story Champs. And so she's teaching the icons, not isolating them, but she's teaching the icons within the context of the story. And that's the best way to do it because it's time efficient. And then honestly, you can just keep going because after the third lesson, they usually got it. They didn't need to be like taught what the icons were individually. Okay, let me get back to this. So sorry. Okay.
Okay, I want to know if you guys are ready to play Story Champs. Say yay, Story Champs.
Yay, Story Champs.
All right, then we are ready. Ready to roll. Remember, the first part, Miss Trina gets to tell the story first, okay? After school, Tyrell went to the park with his mom. Tyrell is our character. See him right there?
Yeah.
When Tyrell came down the slide, he landed in a big mud puddle. Uh-oh. That's his problem. That's right, very nice. Tyrell was really mad because he was all dirty. You see his face? He was really mad because he was all dirty. Tyrell ran to his mom and said, I want to go home. That's our action. And this over here was his feeling, right? He was mad. And his action, he said to his mom, he ran to his mom and said, I want to go home. His mom took him home and gave him a bath because he was dirty. Then Tyrell put on different clothes and was all clean. And that's the ending. You got the character, Kaiden. You go ahead and start.
Here's
Start
Team
telling
Retell.
This part of the story, okay?
So step 2.
Do you remember his name? Tyrell.
Tyrell, he went to the park.
Very nice. Tyrell went to the park. All right, who's got this one?
So she recast, but didn't make her re-say it.
Tell us this part of the story.
He got all dirty.
That's right. When he came down the slide, say it like this. When he came down the slide, he fell in the mud puddle.
When he came down the slide, he fell in the mud puddle.
Perfect. What part of the story do you have here?
He was angry.
That's right. He was angry. Say he was angry because he was all dirty.
He was angry because he was
So she is trying to get them to use complete coherent sentence using a causal connection, right? Here's
Okay.
step 3.
He went to the park, and then what's happening here? Oh, wait, we got to. He said Tyrell. That's our character.
So they're doing a story game while they're waiting for their peer.
We got it. Okay.
Tyrell fell in the mud.
That's right. He fell in the mud. What part of the story is that?
Thumbs down.
That's our problem.
Thumbs
Very good.
down.
Okay, keep going, Joseph. We're listening.
That he was angry.
Look at that. He was angry.
And then the mom
So now the illustrations are gone and it's her turn.
Yes.
then he got all clean.
There's the ending. He got all clean. Way to go, Kaiden. Okay, think about it, Trayvon. When have you ever gone down the slide or gotten dirty when you've played out on the playground here at school?
I went down the slide and I jumped off.
Did you hear that? He was telling a story. Everybody, he's the character. Put your hand on our head.
I fell in the mud.
Well, he fell in the mud. That's his problem. Very nice. Okay, Trayvon.
And I went home.
Oh, what about this one?
I was angry.
Oh, he was angry. Remember our gesture for feeling? Okay, it's Brooke's turn. Has something like that ever happened to you?
Now there's no more icons.
All right, tell us about it.
And then I run to my mommy and say, and then I say I want to go home.
Okay, that sounds like an action, but how did you feel?
Sad.
Okay, she was sad. Say, I was sad because I was all dirty.
I was sad because I was all dirty.
That's right. There you go. There's our feeling. Okay. All right. Now tell us the action.
And then my mommy put my clothes in the washer and then she took me down.
Okay. So was that the action? All right, guys. Listen. She asked her mom to take her home, and her mother.
I didn't do myself.
Yeah. Hold on, just a second, kind of. And then she got a bath. And she put your clothes in the washer. That's the action? Okay, then tell us about the ending. Did you guys do the action? Did you listen to her? Do the action. Good.
And then my mommy let me go play with my Barbie dolls at the park.
And then she got to play with her Barbie dolls at the park. That's a great ending. Oh, tell me, if you guys like playing Story Champ, say yay, Story Champ.
Okay, let that play through instead of stopping, lest it would have crashed again. Okay, so just treating it through this whole thing, the natural process is to improve the student's language. So get them to practice, get them to retell, use a complete sentence, it's coherent. The other students are playing story games. All of these things are in that one page, just that lesson plan. So when you're looking at it, you're going to want to go ahead and like review it before you do anything else. And then that way you can, that way you can go ahead and like familiarize yourself, maybe watch this video again. We have it on the website. I am looking for places to fly to and record small and large group lessons, FYI, and I will give you training for free. We will barter, but we need to update our videos here. They're a little older and COVID, the pandemic got in the way of our plans. Anyway, if you're interested, you can email me. I'll throw up my email at the end. Okay, so in this particular case, you know, she went through it, everybody had something to do, and this just goes to show you it's not going to be super perfect. Like, that's just not how things happen. All right, I'm going to put, while we have time, in the chat, you will find right now, no one comment, so the link is the only thing you see. Here is the Google form if you need a certificate of attendance. Okay, so right now, just open it up and you can finish it later. All right, but back to this. So I usually get asked these questions, and you know, for the first question asked is, you know, is this appropriate for students age 13 years? You heard me say this already. Yes. So Story Champs is a program. It can be used with older students. It's really the research we've used in the preliminary stages. We're in preliminary stages with older students. We are developing something for grades 3 through 5, but we are researchers and we make revisions based on research data. So we're a couple-ish years away from that. Okay. But don't wait on that, right? So it's the research foundation that we have is basically in the principles of effective instruction and those steps. And if you can find or revise or maybe edit some of the stories so they might be include things that the students find motivating. So rather than, you know, like a board game or playing with dolls, you can put Dungeons and Dragons or you can mention something. So feel free to do that and not make too much work on yourself, right? So number 2, do you still fade visuals as quickly for a nonverbal individual? Okay, very clear. You should always adapt instruction to the needs of your learners. And you're going to do that based on your clinical judgment, not mine, and the knowledge that you have, not me, of that unique individual and the environment or context in which you're teaching. Okay. So we've worked with students who have very limited language. They have like 1 to 2 expressive phrase, let's just say phrases, not even just one word. And so they'll soon say things like a, you know, noun or noun verb combination. So they might say like David fell or David goes school. That's an improvement for them. Great. Okay. So just as I would do for that, I might be keeping out really those visuals for a while so that they can get to that part before I start fading it out. So we're not going to best clinical judgment. So if you have any reservations about whether or not you should be fading yet and you have specific examples for me and you just quickly want to meet via Zoom for like 10 minutes, I don't mind and I can give you some feedback, but chances are you go with your gut. You're the educator, you're the SLP, not me. Just follow the steps in the lesson. All right, how when summarizing, do I reread the story verbatim? Do not. It will take you forever. So you're just going to want to paraphrase after you tell the story the first time completely and you're modeling it for them, just paraphrase it from there on out anytime it says summarize the story. What about a lesson? On average, the lessons that we've done in our research, they only go for about 20 minutes or so. In my experience and practice, and in the studies, like it ranges from 15 to 25. We have had lessons go to 40 minutes, but that's one-on-one, and that's because we needed a lot of breaks in between. And a good example would be looking at our one-to-one video demonstration for a one-to-one lesson that's with Stuart. Okay, so on average, 20 minutes. If you're new to Story Champs, 25 to 30 max. If it's taking you longer, email me. Taking me 40, definitely email me. Something's up and I need to help you because I don't want you to quit Story Champs because you don't have that time. All right, and then how many sessions are recommended? Who can use Story Champs? Anybody can use Story Champs who knows how to follow the procedures. So you could, if you feel competent, you can train other people. And we're okay. There's no certification in it yet. We won't make a certification. Like this is we're researchers. We want this. We want kids to have the best tools. So we're not going to do that to you. How long does a lesson take? Who uses Story Champs? How many sessions are recommended? That is up to you. Okay. And I just want to say, like, and grade level, Story Champs is not leveled by grade. The stories and lessons are not assigned a grade level because it's all about your students' needs. And that's based on feedback that you're both getting in the lesson. But like when you start, you're hopefully using an assessment of oral narrative skills so that you know what the student needs to work on, right? If you're doing intervention in a small group, right? So I would know that these students need to work on these things. And I would be informed by my data or my assessment data. Now, in terms of how many sessions are recommended, you're not going to know that unless you're progress monitoring. Okay, and so we do have in the cube the narrative language measured listening that is free on our website. Literally, it's free. No joke. And there's norms there, but it's the criterion-based measure that you're going to be using it as. Like, are they starting to include those key story grammar elements? So if Story Champs is effective, once a week max, every 2 weeks, I'm going to give them one of those NLM listening forms. And now I see, oh, they're starting to include character now. And their setting went from a score of 1 to 2. Like if you're seeing progress, then you can advance, you can move on to another lesson plan, right? And then I already cut to the chase. Can I use the free cubed assessment for progress? Yes, please. I mean, we do it for our research. That's why we made it, is to know if Story Champs worked. And that's why we make it free for you, is so you can know if Story Champs works. Okay, so that is it for tonight's webinar. And so I apologize, went a little bit over, but thank you. There's so many of you who stayed. So thank you so much. I would be happy, I'm going to end this recording. But if you have any questions, I would be happy to address them. Can everybody get the form or no one can get it? Okay. I would open up, if you cannot get to that form, just open it in a different browser. Okay. You might want to like cut and paste it. Thank you. Into an email and then open it on your phone. Sometimes technology is great until it's not. So thank you all. Please give me feedback and reach out. Oh, I have in there in the form when you fill it out, you're going to get an email from me. So then you can just reply right to that. Anybody have any questions? Let me look through the Q&A. No. I think that's it from everybody. All right. Well, I will see you in the future, and then Trina will be here. Yay! I get a break. She will be here for the first Wednesday of November, and she'll be working on vocabulary. So, and Jillian, the material to promote Story Champs at home is on the flash drive or the USB that comes with the kit, and it's the take-home activities or family activities. And that is in there.